Hey there, I think you all know the drill on iceberg videos, but in case you don't, icebergs cover everything you need to know about a certain topic, in this case Portal, with the topics getting more mysterious the deeper it goes, just as the iceberg gets darker. Videos starting from the tip of the iceberg, figuratively and literally. The iceberg I'll be covering is a mix and match of the most popular and the longest one I could find, with a few extra entries teleported in. Speaking of portals, man, wouldn't it be great if you could skip grocery shopping by teleporting your meals in front of your door? Actually, thankfully I know a service that does just about that. This video is sponsored by Factor75. Whether you're trying to save on time, stress or money, Factor75 is the perfect product for you. Factor75 offers chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, never-frozen meals at a price you like, delivered right to your door, which will make 2024 not only your most delicious but also your most stress-free and healthy year yet. Never again will you come home from a long day of work to find that there's no food at home. Factor meals eliminate the hassle of prepping, cooking and cleaning up, and also lets you avoid the overpriced trap that is takeout food. And it's also way more delicious. With support for all lifestyles, you can choose from a weekly menu of 35 recipes, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan and Veggie, and all that delivered right to your doorstep. Factor75 is healthy eating made easy. Not only do you save on grocery shopping and switch to a life of on-the-go gourmet food by getting Factor75, they also offer snack options like breakfast, smoothies and more, which helps you keep going no matter what's on your schedule. As someone who has to get work done as quickly as possible, quick meal options are usually too expensive, unhealthy or just don't taste good. Factor75 eliminates all of those problems in a singular service. So what are you waiting for? Order your first Factor75 meal now and get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders using my link. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. Or alternatively, use my code LuciaMay50. Thanks once more to Factor75 for sponsoring and making this video possible. Please consider checking them out. Not only are you doing yourself a favor, but you're also supporting me by doing so. Now back to the iceberg. We'll get into the iceberg in a second. Before that, I want to note that there are bound to be a few mistakes that sneak into this video script. So if there are any, I'll be adding corrections to the description. Final note before the iceberg, huge shoutout to JD Creeper for helping me with the script. She has way more knowledge of Portal lore than I do. She has her own modding team called the Unnamed Studio. You can join their Discord for news on their projects. They're also looking for developers and playtesters for the Portal 2, Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2 and SFM division. If any of that sounds interesting to you, join the Discord, link is in the description. Also feel free to join my Discord as well, lots of fun times are to be had. Okay, so with everything out of the way, let's get into the full Portal Iceberg. This guy is home to a lot of things that are just common knowledge if you've played the games. Though perhaps there's a fun fact or two you didn't know yet. The cake is a lie. The cake is a lie is an iconic phrase from the Portal series and arguably the most iconic phrase in gaming as a whole. It originated in the original Portal where this phrase is painted on the walls of the test chambers. During Portal 1, the main character Shell is promised cake as a reward for passing the test chambers. But this eventually turns out to be a lie. Half-Life connection. The Half-Life and Portal games were made by the same company, Valve Software, which at one point decided to have both games take place in the same universe canonically, with both referencing each other at multiple points. Mainly, the Borealis ship that becomes what is arguably the most important object of Half-Life is said to be the result of Aperture Science experiments. Aperture Science obviously being the facility in which Portal takes place in. Same goes the other way around. Black Mesa is referenced in Portal 1 and 2. Black Mesa being the research facility of Half-Life 1. Redman dens. You can find Redman dens all throughout the first and second game. They will contain thrown together beds and empty cans of food, and most importantly, tons of scribblings on the walls. These are the dens of Doug Redman, who is way too interesting of a character to be this high up in the iceberg, which is why he returns later. Still Alive. Still Alive is a song I'm sure all of you know. It's a song playing at the end credits of Portal 1. Here's a short clip in case you somehow forgot.
For the people who are still alive.
It also retells the event of Portal 1 and references Black Mesa, going back to the Half-Life connection. Portal the Flash version. I think the title Portal the Flash version tells you everything you need to know, but in case it doesn't, have this footage of it. Okay, that's enough. Portal Still Alive. Portal Still Alive is the title of the Xbox 360 port of Portal, which also includes 14 test chambers of a mod called Portal the Flash version map pack, which was done by the team Recreate Stuff, and are a port of the test chambers of the Flash version into normal Portal. This version was never released to PC, though you can download a free mod to essentially have the same experience. You may know the Recreate Stuff team from Nightmare House 2, Underhell and In Sound Mind. Oracle Turret foreshadowing. The Oracle Turret is seen in Portal 2 and it details the legend of the Greek titan Prometheus, one that features many similarities to GLaDOS and the story itself. The sentence in question is,
Prometheus was punished by the gods for giving the gift of knowledge to man. He was cast into the bowels of the earth and pecked by birds.
The sentence is slightly changed from the original. Prometheus actually gave the gift of fire to man and was then exiled on top of a mountain, where his liver got ripped out by birds every day. It was slightly changed to fit better to Portal 2 though. GLaDOS gives knowledge by telling Wheatley that he was designed to be a moron. which causes him to throw GLaDOS and Shell down into old Aperture, the bowels of the earth. Once Shell and GLaDOS land, we find GLaDOS being picked at by a crow. Companion Cube. The Companion Cube is a weighted storage cube in Portal 1 and 2. Despite being an inanimate object, GLaDOS, the game's antagonist, suggests that the Companion Cube will accompany and support the player. This seemingly regular cube ends up becoming a character of its own, being the player's only real emotional connection, if you can call it that. Foreshadowing to the final category of this iceberg, the Companion Cube shows an aspect of what's great about Portal's writing and atmosphere, where a metal box ends up becoming your best friend. Cooperative Testing Initiative. Cooperative Testing Initiative is the name of the Portal 2 co-op game mode, where you together with another player have to solve tests together. You play as Peabody and Atlas respectively. The events of this are canon to the Portal lore, and we will get more into it later. If any of you have not played it yet, I honestly recommend doing so, a pretty fun campaign. The Cooperative Testing Initiative is also mentioned by GLaDOS in the single-player campaign. LEGO Dimensions. LEGO Dimensions is a game that featured many different franchises in its gameplay, one of them being Portal. One level was included in the story and one could only be unlocked by getting the Portal level pack. Going by this guy's playthrough, they last for a combined hour. While the story level is more inspired by Portal 1 and is played through by the game's protagonists, Batman, Gandalf and Reicter from the LEGO movie. Odd pitch, I know. The level pack features Shell as a playable character alongside Wheatley. Wheatley and GLaDOS are featured in the game, for which the original voice actors returned. The gameplay of the level pack is somewhat similar to that of early Portal 2, with Wheatley as your companion as you run through test chambers with a few LEGO elements built in. The game also features a bit of a story, told through the dialogue and levels, and is set after Portal 2, but I'll get to that later down the iceberg. Man, that's my fourth later down the iceberg already. I'll stop myself from now on, sorry. Shell's Potato Experiment. During the visit to Old Aperture, we see many potato experiments done on Bring Your Daughter to Work Day. One of them was done by Shell. She simply created a potato battery, or rather she simply measured how many volts it creates, which she notes she did for last year's project as well. Her hypothesis is that this experiment will produce less volts than the one from last year because the potato is older, which it turns out to be the contrary. It produces 0.1 more volts for a total amount of 1.6 volts. Portal 2 PETI. Portal 2 PETI is the abbreviation for Perpetual Testing Initiative, which is the in-universe name for the DLC that introduced the level editor, or puzzle maker, alongside the workshop integration for it. Unlike how most games would have handled a level editor and workshop integration, Valve gave an in-lore explanation for it. It is explained in the trailer for the DLC that Cave Johnson wanted to cut on spending to avoid bankruptcy. To do so, he established the Extra Earth Outsourcing Initiative, in which they contact other universes. So instead of building their own test chambers, they sent the blueprints to other Aperture scientists in different dimensions to have them send back the finished test chambers. In reality, of course, this is referring to the community map makers making test chambers and uploading them to the Steam workshop. This confirms the multiverse as Portal canon. It also involves a bunch of Cave Johnson lines whenever you start a community map, which can be pieced together to a bit of a story. It goes somewhat like this. Cave orders the player to find the Moneyverse, a universe made of US currency. However, we eventually meet Dark Cave in another universe, who tells the player to bring information about a Moneyverse to him instead, for which the player would then receive double their asparagus rations and all the methane they can breathe. This ends up becoming a bidding war between the two caves, before the evil counterpart of the player eventually finds two Moneyverses, which they can then split. Cave then brings the player back to Earth 1 to continue testing, now that they can afford their own chambers. This means that the multiverse plot point gets solved after a while, which, if any of you care for my very personal opinion, while I like the story aspect of Aperture wanting to save money by contacting the multiverse in and of itself, because it's just so incredibly Aperture, I despise multiverse stories with every bone of my body, so I personally consider this non-canon. Something about knowing the fact that the story you're watching or playing exists another unlimited amount of times with unlimited amounts of variations takes the steam out of the one you're in and just sucks. But that's just my opinion. Tag the Power of Paint. Tag the Power of Paint is a puzzle game focused around being able to spray paint that changes the physics properties of the sprayed area. The whole team behind this game was hired by Valve to work on Portal 2, with the gels we see in Portal 2 being heavily inspired by this game. Aperture Tag. Aperture Tag is a popular Portal 2 mod that features the Aperture Science paint gun device, with which you can spread out unlimited amounts of repulsion and propulsion gel. The mod consists of a whole 27 maps, some of them reusing old test chambers of both Portal and Portal 2. It also takes place after the Portal 2 co-op campaign and features a bit of a story that I don't want to spoil. While rated very positive on Steam, many complain about the story being poorly written, the voice acting being subpar and a general lack of polish. Also about the fact that it costs $5, a price tag being a thing rarely seen in mods. I've not played it myself, but going by the reviews, it seems it's still worth a try if you like Portal. Portal Story Smell. Staying with mods, Portal Story Smell is a fan favorite. Mel is a cut character from Portal 2 and was originally to be the protagonist, and later was planned to be included in the co-op campaign. Portal Story Smell simply used the character to create a whole new story, and tell a new story they did. The mod released to exceptional ratings and can be played for free on Steam. It will honestly be a shame to spoil the story too much, The premise is that Mel is an Olympic track runner who participates in an Aperture Science extended relaxation test. The experiment goes wrong and Mel wakes up in the far future. After this, she acquires a 1970s puzzle device, and the rest you can probably imagine. Especially since it's free, I can only recommend checking it out. Portal No Escape. Portal No Escape is a great fan-made short film from 2011 featuring a portal gun, which features some stunning VFX work. Again, heavily recommend checking it out. VR Portal games. There is one main Portal VR game called Portal Stories VR, made by the people who also made Mel. In an attempt to avoid motion sickness that an actual Portal VR game would inevitably cause, this game features no portal gun. It's still a fun game though, and it's free. The Lab. The Lab is a collection of virtual reality minigames released by Valve to show off the capabilities of the HTC Vive. The game's hub is set in an Aperture Science Pocket Universe, specifically Pocket Universe 8, populated by bendies. There are a total of 8 minigames: Slingshot, Longbow, Zortex, Postcards, Human Medical Scan, Solar System, Robot Repair, and Secret Shop. Most importantly, it features a fetchbot, which, oh come on, what a little cutie, what a good boy, aren't you? Harry 101 UK. Harry 101 UK is a very talented filmmaker, animator, voice actor, and music composer that is primarily known for his SFM work featuring the Portal games, though he has expanded quite a bunch since. He's also made quite a few songs to accompany his animations. You probably know some of them, like This Is Aperture or the Wheatley song. Portal Reloaded. Portal Reloaded is another mod that introduces a third portal, a time portal that jumps time 20 years into the future. The mod features 25 new puzzles, all of which require the third portal. It's free on Steam, as long as you own Portal 2. A very well received mod once more. I recommend checking it out. Portal Bridge Constructor. Portal Bridge Constructor was released by the people who made the original Bridge Constructor game in 2017 in collaboration with Valve. It's basically exactly what the title leads you to expect. You have to construct bridges for trucks to pass, but it involves portal elements. Again, good reviews, check it out if you want. Tip of the iceberg. Getting to the tip of the iceberg, if you spent some time in the Portal community, you most likely know all of these. Though again, perhaps you learned some small fun details. Valve's turret replica. The Valve offices feature a real-life Portal turret that was sent to them by Reicter Workshop, who you may know for their work on Lord of the Rings, for example. The turret also works. Well, not entirely. It detects people in the room and also shoots at them, though only in form of a flickering light. No actual bullets involved. Doug Redman / Lab Red comic. Doug Redman is a character from the Portal series who has a significant role in the game's lore. He's a former Aperture Science employee who survived GLaDOS's neurotoxin attack by hiding in the maintenance areas and creating Redman dens filled with his artwork and scribbles. Most importantly, the "cake is a lie" line can be found in his dens, which is one of our first hints that GLaDOS should not be trusted. Most of the things we know about him, however, are from the Lab Red comics, which tell the events of how Doug Redman survived and his involvement in the story, which are nothing to flock at. The comics are awesome and I recommend reading them before I end up spoiling many elements of it throughout this video. Wheatley in TF2. Most of you are probably familiar with the multiplayer shooter Team Fortress 2, which was also made by Valve, the company that made Portal. The game features different weapons for its classes, one of them being a reskin of the spy sapper that looks and sounds like Wheatley. The original voice actor actually recorded a bunch of lines for this. It doesn't have any extra functionality that the original sapper doesn't have as well though, besides being way cooler. Single player co-op maps. I'm unsure if this means playing co-op maps in single player or single player maps in co-op. Both are possible with some trickery. There are guides on how to play most of Portal 2 single player and co-op. You can also play some co-op maps in single player using the developer commentary mode. You can also play co-op by yourself by enabling split screen and using multiple controllers, but I wouldn't count this as true single player. Aperture Desk Job. Alongside the release of the Steam Deck in 2022, the free game Aperture Desk Job hit the Steam store. It's set in the Portal universe and the gameplay consists of following prompts given to you while sitting at a desk, hence the name Aperture Desk Job. Throughout the game, you're accompanied by Grady, a personality core. The game again features a bit of story, featuring toilet turrets, a giant Cave Johnson AI head, and the player almost being able to kill Cave Johnson's AI form. The wiki notes that the events of Aperture Desk Job are non-canon. This is backed up by a supposed email of Eric Wolper, writer of both Portals, stating that the side projects are just fun non-canon things. I could see it somehow being canon though. It's fun to note that J.K. Simmons, voice of Cave Johnson, reprised his role for this, over a decade after Portal 2's release. Narbacular Drop. Narbacular Drop is a game developed by Nuclear Monkey Software in 2005. Its main gameplay focus was on Portals. After the game was released, Valve hired the entire development team to work for them. They then developed Portal, a spiritual successor to Narbacular Drop. Hoopy the Hoop. At the end of Portal 1, you see this little hoop fall out of the sky. It is seen again at Portal 2 as well. The reason for all the hubbub around it is because Valve thought it could potentially turn into a meme, and Valve was very enthusiastic about it. It didn't end up becoming one though. Tons of memes emerged from both the games that still hold up today. The companion cube, the cake, the space core, the lemon speech. Hoopy failed though. Poor Hoopy. Android Hell. Android Hell is both a name of a Portal 1 soundtrack and also a place mentioned by GLaDOS. She mentions that it is a place where androids are sent at the first sign of defiance, and that it's real. GLaDOS is a non-liar, so this could very well just not be true, but who knows? F-stop. After the Orange Box released, Gabe Newell was concerned that they were focusing too much on releasing games instead of experimenting. Thus Valve ended up doing direct design experiments, where all employees would stop development on games and they were allowed to think of creative ideas for 4 months, with no stress about having to work on games. One of the results was F-stop, and it almost ended up being a sequel to Portal in the form of a prequel. The game would feature no portals, and instead a camera where you have to take images of objects, which, by using the 2D nature of the camera and its inability to capture depth, you could twist and turn objects to your liking to solve puzzles. This story was set to feature Cave Johnson, but no GLaDOS. I could honestly make a full video on this topic, and I probably will, but this was the short version. Hidden cake recipe. By looking at this monitor in the back area of Aperture and Portal 1, between a lot of code gibberish you will find a cake recipe. It features ingredients like injector needle gun or cranial caps, so it's not edible. It might just be the recipe to the cake we see at the end of Portal 1 though. ApertureScience.com. ApertureScience.com is a real website that was made to promote Portal. The website has sadly become unusable ever since Flash Player was discontinued at the end of 2020. The website featured a command prompt where you could enter many things to get various responses, and a video that seems to be a security feed featuring many objects of Portal, Half-Life 2 and TF2. The website mostly revealed information about Portal and Aperture Science and featured an ARG. Also featured was a festive version of Still Alive. By typing in the correct commands, you could find camera feeds of the relaxation board of Portal 1 with text written by an old Aperture employee, who seemed confused at why the facility is in lockdown. The most important aspect is discovered later on once you get to the Apply section, where one of the questions you could ask is, if you went missing tomorrow, would anyone miss you? Which gives insight to how sinister Aperture really was, and how they managed to get so many test subjects. Of course, it's unknown if any of this is canon. Later things found on this website are direct retcons. Mostly the backstory features about Cave Johnson and Aperture Science as a whole. The command prompt on this website was removed in 2010, as Valve was getting ready to release Portal 2. Probably due to all the retcons it featured. It also changed the video feed to only include Portal objects, and replaced an Easter egg featuring the gnome with one featuring Peabody instead, who at this point was fully unknown. Portal Revolution. A mod that only released somewhat recently. I honestly don't want to even delve into it here, as I plan on making a separate video about this mod eventually. So subscribe to see that happen, which by the way, 95% of you unsubscribed, so please consider doing so anyway. J.J. Abrams' Portal movie. More than a decade ago, J.J. Abrams announced that he was in talks with Gabe Newell to make a Half-Life Portal movie. There was then silence for many years until 2021, where J.J. Abrams announced that the Portal movie script was currently being written. Ever since, silence. Retcon Portal lore. There are a bunch of small retcons in the Portal lore, most of them minor. A very noteworthy one, of course, being the fact that the ending of Portal 1 got changed via an update. GLaDOS is Caroline. This is just a lore fact. Caroline was the assistant of Cave Johnson, who got her mind uploaded to GLaDOS, while she was alive. Cave described her as the backbone of the facility. Once Cave Johnson became terminally ill in the 1980s, it was his wish to leave her in charge of Aperture, the Borealis. The Borealis might be the most important object in the Half-Life/Portal universe, and it's also the most direct connection between the two games we have, and we know close to nothing about it. The Borealis was constructed by Aperture Science and then teleported away to an unknown location somewhere in the Arctic. You can find the empty dry dock where the Borealis was located in Portal 2. We have yet to receive any answers on the Borealis. One of the proposed ideas was by former Valve writer Mark Reicter on his Epistle 3 letter. If you want more info on that, check out our video on the whole story. Meet the Course. This is a fun series made by Harry101 UK, who I mentioned earlier. It's inspired by the Meet the Team series of Team Fortress 2. It's really well made and can be found on YouTube. The Underground. This is another series around Portal produced by Machinima. Man, that's a throwback. It is a talk show style series that interviews many of the cores we know from Portal. Again, fun series, check it out if you want. Poker Night 2. Poker Night 2 is a game made by Telltale Games and alongside many characters of other franchises also features GLaDOS as the dealer. The game is unavailable for purchase today, presumably because the licenses ran out. You can still play it though if you bought it when it was available. Portal, the uncooperative cake acquisition game. This is a board game made by Cryptozoic in collaboration with Valve. There is nothing worse than being explained the rules of a board game, so I won't even bother. It's a pretty complicated strategy game that was released to alright reviews. It features many characters though and cards about them, most notably Greg, who we will get to later down the iceberg. UAE mentioned in Portal 2. There is a line which weakly mentions the United Arab Emirates. Specifically, he says that he's
from the Board of International Neurotoxin Observers from the United Arab Emirates. Hello.
Portal 2, the unauthorized musical. As the title may suggest, this is a musical about Portal. You can watch the full thing on YouTube. It actually has multiple scenes involving portals, which were incredibly cleverly done. Again, I recommend checking it out. Bottom of the summit. We're now at the bottom of the summit. This is where theories and more deep knowledge about the games and its connected media come in. Even as a Portal fan, you most likely don't know all of these. Companion cubes contain corpses. There is a popular video made by the game theorists that suggests that the theory that companion cubes contain corpses. Or something.
Everyone's favorite rhombohedron has a scary little secret inside of it. And no, I'm not referring to this guy's penis.
There's nothing really confirming it in the game though. It's heavily discussed if this could be true. Most of the theory stems from the fact that the companion cube is treated like a person, especially in Portal 1. When companion cubes get dissolved, it's suggested that you can hear a faint "help me." But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. GLaDOS killed all the scientists. True, using neurotoxin, except Dark Redman. GLaDOS body rearrangement. This is most likely referring to the fact that between Portal 1 and 2, GLaDOS's design was changed quite a bit. This is most likely just an art style change with no lore reason, or maybe someone reassembled her between the games. Turret Opera Song meaning. The finale of Portal 2 involves the turret opera, which all of you know of. It's also seen hidden behind a wall earlier in the game. The meaning behind it is unknown. One of the plays they sing involves the word ciel, which is speculated to be a reference to the name Shell. The word itself being French meaning sky or also heaven in certain contexts. Fun fact, Ellen McLean, known in Portal as the voice of GLaDOS and Caroline, the Sentry and Oracle turret and the Curiosity and Intelligence core, was an opera singer before becoming a voice actress. What a talent and legend. Gender-neutral polyamory-friendly partnership policy. On a clipboard in Portal 2 you can find the text, Gender-neutral polyamory-friendly partnership policy. We don't see the description of this, due to it being too low res. Wheatley Crab. Wheatley Crab is a meme that stems from an unused animation of Portal 2, which involves Wheatley turning into something resembling a crab. Greek mythology metaphors. The main Greek mythology metaphor is the previous mention of Prometheus by the Oracle turret. Perhaps to add, the fall is exactly 4,200 meters long, the exact distance Prometheus fell. Also, right after the fall, you find a sign saying Tartarus, which is the lower part of the underworld in Greek mythology. Pendleton. In the early development of Portal 2, Wheatley's name was originally to be Pendleton. Chamber 17 unused room. In Chamber 17 of Portal 1 you can find this unused room. It looks like you took a corner out of a normal test chamber. In reality, however, this is not truly fully unused. It's instead part of the advanced test chambers you unlock after completing the story once. Announcer was originally a pre-recorded GLaDOS. The Announcer is an automated system designed to keep tests running at circumstances of potentially apocalyptic significance. This voice guided Shell through test chambers at the start of Portal 2. Going by unused sound files, this character was originally to be a pre-recorded GLaDOS instead. I'm glad they went with the Announcer. It kind of makes the reveal of GLaDOS's return more impactful. Caroline and Cave are Shell's parents. The idea of Caroline and Cave being Shell's parents is kinda just disproven by Shell's potato experiment. On it says that she asked her dad if she could do a different experiment, but her dad said that Cave Johnson would be mad. However, there is a chance she may have been adopted by them at a young age, especially given all the adoption jokes by GLaDOS directed at Shell. There's also a chance that Caroline is her mother, but Cave Johnson is not her dad. There's also a chance that she's a result of a gene experiment of sorts, maybe a clone based off of Cave Johnson and Caroline, which makes her the child of them to some extent. As of right now, this is just a theory. A game theory! Vanilla Crazy Cakes. This might be referring to two things. After beating Portal 1 you gain access to 6 advanced test chambers. All these chambers are ones you previously played, with small tweaks to make them harder. By completing 2, 4 and on of them respectively, you get achievements. For 2 you receive the Cupcake achievement, for 4 you receive the Fruitcake achievement, and for beating all of them it's the Vanilla Crazy Cakes achievement. More than likely, however, it is actually referring to an earlier version of the GLaDOS boss fight in Portal 1. It was said to take place in the turret chamber, the one you also know from the retail Portal 1 during the final sections of the game. In this early concept, GLaDOS would repeat the words Vanilla Crazy Cake after being damaged enough. How long did Shell sleep for? Perhaps one of gaming's biggest mysteries. How long was Shell asleep for? The voice at the beginning of Portal 2 eventually ended up repeating the word 9 in a loop over and over again. This could either be what it was supposed to do, or it could have gotten stuck in a loop past the first 9. It is intentionally left vague as to make anything possible in a potential future title, though it is uncertain if that will ever happen. Given that Aperture seems really overtaken by nature in Portal 2 when compared to the first game, it can be assumed it has been some years at least. The common consensus seems to be anywhere between 20 years to 50,000 years, though at this point questions like cell damage may arise. But maybe Aperture is able to stop that. There's also an unused GLaDOS line in Portal 2 that mentions 50,000 years at the time Shell slept for.
50,000 years is a lot of time to think. About me. About you. We were doing so well together.
Even if not used in the end, it tells us that during development, this was the assumed time that had gone by. It was also stated in the final hours of Portal 2, a book about the development of Portal 2, that the developers set it 50,000 years into the future because they regretted connecting Portal to Half-Life at all, and wanted to disconnect it as much as possible. I personally believe it to be on the lower end at about 20 to 30 years, which would make Portal 2 take place at around the time Half-Life 2 takes place. This is just because I want to imagine both Gordon and Shell being around at the same time. This obviously isn't confirmed, and evidence points to a far longer time span in reality. The enrichment center is in Ohio. The main facility is located in Upper Michigan, as can be seen on this newspaper. However, they apparently have at least one other base of operations in Cleveland, Ohio. This is found on a Borealis blueprint file. GLaDOS in Pacific Rim. The creator of the movie Pacific Rim's kids were fans of Portal, which is why he hired Alan McLean to do a voice in the movie, and specifically to do it like GLaDOS. Here's the scene.
Pilots ready to connect. 2 pilots engaged in neural bridge. Ready to activate the Jaeger in 3, 2, 1.
Hidden Peabody cameo. In the Portal 2 single-player campaign, during Chapter 8, The Itch, Peabody can be seen in one of the test chambers. Geico ad. There is an ad for the insurance company Geico that is set in Portal, even featuring unique GLaDOS lines. This is confirmed by her husband in the comments of the video. Unused Rick lines. Rick is the name that the Avenger Sphere calls himself. The Avenger Sphere speaks like a stereotypical tough guy, boasting about his bravery. He also flirts with Shell, making chauvinistic comments. He also tries to make Shell take a lady break, while he deals with Wheatley himself. The unused line this is referring to is one where it yells at both the space and fact sphere. This could mean one of 3 things, either to be used in the cage before the final boss fight, while on the central core body, or Rick was to be seen in the ending cutscenes, as, if you look closely, Rick does end up in space. Portal is feminist propaganda. I don't know what this is referring to, and sounds like something a 14-year-old would write due to the fact that the protagonist is a woman. I guess having the main protagonist and antagonist in a game be women, without sexualizing them in any way, was pretty groundbreaking in the early 2000s, and probably helped the feminist movement in gaming, which, good on them, we love women. There's also a really long article that goes into feminism and also sexism in Portal in very intricate detail that I wanted to shout out, because I believe it is very brilliantly written, which I can't possibly summarize if I wanted to. If you're more interested in the whole topic, I'll link it in the description. Turrets being fusion powered. On the caseless turret, you can see a small fusion core, so this is a fact. Human vault. At the end of Portal 2's cooperative campaign, Atlas and Peabody discover, and open, a vault full of hundreds, if not thousands of humans. The tests preceding this appear to be built by GLaDOS to prepare the bots to open it, as it requires an entity to perform a human-like gesture to open it. The origins of this vault are unknown, but we do know that, once GLaDOS got her hands on these subjects, she tested and disposed of all of them in only a week. Crosshair and Portal 2 editor observation rooms. A Reddit user once noticed that in the Portal 2 editor observation rooms, you can see a crosshair. It's incredibly hard to notice, so it just goes to show how much Portal fans are starving. Exile vilified music videos. This refers to a Portal song made by The National. It revolves around the relationship between Shell and GLaDOS. You can hear the song in the game in one of Redman's hideouts, where a radio will play it if the position of the radio is right. There was a contest held by Valve to submit a music video for the song, which you can find lots of on YouTube. A pretty fun community event that I wish Valve did more often. Man, Valve used to be really involved with the community. Superman placeholder portals. During Portal's development, a texture of Superman was used as a placeholder. I couldn't find any solid source of what the texture looked like, though an old video where Tyler McVicker claims it was Christopher Reeve's Superman and he used this picture in his video. Below the surface. Going below the surface, you are less and less likely to know these theories. Though still, relatively speaking, we are pretty high up. Tap yourself on the back for each of these entries you are aware of though. GLaDOS knows of the Combine. There is a singular line by GLaDOS that may allude to her knowing of the Combine. If we are to assume Portal 1 takes place past the events of the 7-hour war, then the final line GLaDOS says may be referring to the Combine.
All I know is I'm the only thing standing between us and them.
This never gets picked up again in the sequel. Though what could she possibly be referring to if not the Combine? Unless of course you assume she's lying, which I don't think is the case. The Moron Theory. The Moron Theory is a really interesting observation/theory made by YouTuber Leadhead in their video of the same title, Portal 2 The Moron Theory. To not take away what is said in the video entirely, it's basically about the fact that every character in Portal is dumb, i.e. a moron, even the ones you'd assume to be smart like GLaDOS. I'd recommend giving the video a watch. Portal 2 Co-op and Portal 1. There's a mod that's currently in development called Portal Cooperative. It features Shell and Mel as a protagonist. Beta versions are already out as well, which you can play already, so go check it out if you're interested. Portal 1 and 2 beta. Just like any other game, there are also beta versions of Portal 1 and 2, though these were never officially released, which hasn't stopped modders from trying to recreate it though. The beta of Portal 1 used many textures we know from Other Prospect. There really isn't a whole lot we know of the beta of Portal 2. However, when the Portal Companion Collection was released for the Switch back in 2022, there were some beta maps included by accident. It's unclear though how far back in development these go, though presumably none or not, since they all kinda just look the same as the final Portal 2. There is also an era of Portal 2 development dubbed the Core Hub era, which we don't know a whole lot about, but was most likely scrapped due to requiring way too many voice actors. Redman in Portal 2 ending. He isn't. Purple Gel. While the color purple was merely a placeholder texture, this gel was to allow the player to walk on walls it was applied to. It is thus also known as the adhesion gel. This was eventually cut due to inducing motion sickness. Once the peer-reviewed DLC was released, this gel was replaced by reflection gel, which can instead reflect lasers off of it. This also went unused, though some community maps have included it before. Shell speaks in Portal 2 beta. Before deciding to go for the moon ending of Portal 2, one proposed idea was to have Shell be forced to speak using the middle mouse button, where she would mutter the word yes in order to deactivate Wheatley. Footage of this actually exists featuring a placeholder voice.
Yes.
This idea is kinda lame, so I'm glad we got the way more memorable moon ending. Enrichment spheres are from F-Stop. The enrichment spheres seen in the lowest levels of Portal 2 are indeed remnants of F-Stop. Wheatley's bombs are cores. This is not a lore fact, but the bombs of his seem to reuse parts used in cores. Redman adopted Shell. The idea that Shell is Redman's adopted daughter might sound enticing at first. In the Lab Rat comics, however, it's never mentioned that he has a daughter, and he also doesn't know who Shell is when he re-enables power of her solitary confinement to ensure her survival after the ending of Portal 1. Though sure, not impossible. Given his mental state, he might just not be remembering. An unlikely theory though for sure. Portal Prelude. Portal Prelude released in October of 2008, almost exactly a year after the release of the original Portal. The creators wanted to make a mod that included a story, as that is something that seemingly no other Portal mod up until this point featured. The mod tells a story of Aperture Science pre-GLaDOS takeover, and tells a pretty enticing story that ends in exactly the way you'd expect it to. I won't take away too much, and honestly, this might be a topic for a full video. Definitely make sure to check it out if you're interested. Roast beef dinner. To quote the final hours of Portal 2, in one sequence that didn't make the final game, players would arrive at the start of a new puzzle and could see a candlelit roast beef dinner sitting on a table, prepared by GLaDOS. Coming closer, you realize the dinner was ice cold, and then hear GLaDOS chastising you for missing dinner because you were too busy cheating on her with a personality sphere. A map file of this remains, SP Vista Roast Beef, radio transmissions. This is most likely referring to the transmissions received achievement of Portal 1, which involves you finding a total of 23 radios throughout the game and having to receive transmissions from them, which you do by placing them in the correct position in the test chamber. This is mostly just guesswork, but actually decoding them using SSTV software will give you images, all of these relating to the Portal ARG, which I can't go into detail about without blowing up the video's length. To skip through a few segments of the ARG, it eventually led to the release of Portal 2 and another ARG, which is also the next entry, Potato Sack ARG. The Potato Sack ARG, also known as Potato Fool's Day ARG, was created to promote Portal 2, similar to the Portal ARG. This ARG is a lot shorter and involved finding references to Portal in 13 indie games of a pack called the Potato Sack. The pack itself doesn't exist anymore, the games do, and involve games like Killing Floor and Super Meat Boy. These are the images found across all the games. These are quite a bunch and involve a lot of what is assumed to be concept art, featuring what looks to be different concepts for Portal 2 protagonists/test subjects. Here's the rest of them at once. Feel free to pause to look at them. Portal The First Slice. The First Slice is the name of the demo version of Portal. It comprises the first 11 test chambers of the game. You can still download it on Steam, though there really is no reason to if you already own Portal. It is also the name of an N64 port of Portal 1. It looked really impressive and promising, but eventually got taken down by Valve. While Valve themselves might have been alright with it, it would most certainly have gotten them in trouble with Nintendo, which is why they had to tell the creator to take it down. Teaching with Portals. This refers to a community of educators who use Portal as a tool for teaching, most notably about math, logic, physics, spatial reasoning, probability and problem solving. While most certainly also usable to teach the higher grades, it seems to mostly be aimed at the elementary school level of students, especially as Portal is pretty engaging for younger audiences where teachers might have trouble keeping their attention. There is also a special education edition of Portal 2 that features some unique mechanics. Among others, it includes stuff like being able to create timers, solar physics, and also a new entity called the Contraption Cube, of which you can configure various physics properties. This game is only available using Steam for Schools, or by downloading it elsewhere, which I do not encourage of course. Half-Life 2 in Portal's code. If you've ever launched up the console in Portal 1 and typed inputs 101, you will find that you now have all Half-Life 2 weapons. This is because Portal was built on the base of Half-Life 2 and thus still includes a ton of its code. It's also not incredibly hard to port Half-Life 2 maps into Portal and to explore them using the Portal gun. Portal 2 E3 demo. During the E3 of 2010, some Portal gameplay was shown. Most notably about this, Wheatley had a different voice actor, Richard Lord. who worked at Valve during the time Portal 2 was being developed and was the placeholder voice for Wheatley.
Oh, good. You're back. I thought maybe you'd try to escape without me.
It was also the first time we saw many of the objects that were only introduced in Portal 2, the Aperture Science aerial faceplate for example. Though to note, it was also seen before in the form of SE art in the Portal ARG. Its purpose was unknown at that point though. Space Corps and HTV spacecraft. The Konotori 3 is a real Japanese spacecraft launched into space in July of 2012. On one of the panels of the spacecraft, an image of the Space Corps was laser engraved with the words "In Space" written below it. Many believe it to be Wheatley instead. While from the art alone this can't really be discerned, it is way more likely that this is intended to be the Space Corps. Submerged. Now fully submerged, the theories become more mysterious and the lore facts require a bunch of work to extract. We are slowly getting to the real spooky parts. Shell is related to Gordon Freeman. There is no reference to Shell and Freeman being related in any way. If we were to pull on tons of non-existing strings, perhaps we can imagine Gordon Freeman having worked for Aperture before Black Mesa and being Shell's dad, and her also being the image seen in Freeman's locker. Redman's Rambling transcribed. Ghost of Redman is the 7th track on the Portal 2 soundtrack. Portal 2 Songs to Test By, and includes what is speculated to be ramblings of Redman. Most of them are unintelligible. Some of it has been deciphered though. Here's a transcribed version. Feel free to read through all of it. Most importantly to note is references to Cave Johnson, Black Mesa, the Borealis, only referred to as the ship, and Shell. The references to the ship are quite interesting, as he's saying the ship is gone, they're moving it to Mesa Hill, which it's completely unknown what this means. Which, going back to the Borealis, history. There are conflicting reports about the Borealis throughout the games. One we just mentioned was a rambling of Redman saying it's stolen and being moved to Mesa Hill. Given Redman's mental state, it's unknown how much this information can be trusted. Mark later also confirmed that it was him who did the Redman recordings, and that he was just speaking gibberish. Given that the dry dock is found in the 70s section of the facility, it can be assumed that the Borealis was installed in the 70s, and continued receiving modifications until GLaDOS gassed the scientist. This is where Mark Laidlaw's story of Epistle 3 comes in. Mark Laidlaw's story notes that the Aperture Science personnel teleported it away once the Combine invaded. This obviously can't possibly be referring to invading Aperture Science, as the Combine never did that, meaning that the Aperture personnel on the Borealis also heard of the Combine invasion happening above ground. There are really only 4 possible timelines for the Borealis that we can assume. A. Epistle 3 is right, which would place the Combine invasion before the neurotoxin gassing, and the personnel teleported the Borealis away in panic, sending it to the Arctic. B. Epistle 3 is right. The neurotoxin gassing happened before the Combine invasion, but failed to reach the scientists working on the Borealis. They then teleported away once the Combine invasion happened. Or C, what I deem to be most likely, Epistle 3 is wrong, and the scientists on the Borealis never got to find out about the Combine invasion. Instead, they were trying to teleport themselves out of Aperture Science once they saw the green gas flooding the dry docks, accidentally teleporting them to the Arctic. There's also a potential D. The Combine invasion and the gassing took place on the same day. If one is to assume that the invasion took place mere days after the Black Mesa incident, this could be possible. Then wildlife would only have reached so far at this point. So life was still relatively normal, especially if only 1 or 2 days after Black Mesa. Then the Combine invasion happened, at which point the personnel on the Borealis panicked and teleported away, and then GLaDOS gassed the rest. The chaos theory, maybe. It's interesting to note that no matter what theory you go with, there were most likely a few scientists stranded in the Arctic on the Borealis. Another point to mention is this Cave Johnson quote.
Alright, we're working on a little teleportation experiment. Now, this doesn't work with all skin types, so try to remember which skin is yours, and if it doesn't teleport along with you, we'll do what we can to sew you right back into it.
This suggests that the Borealis was used at least once. If we are to assume he's talking about the Borealis. It's basically as much of a Valve confirm as we get though. One thing about Valve is that they love to never directly confirm or deny anything. All doors are always left open. Cave Johnson was uploaded. The theory that Cave Johnson got his mind uploaded stems from 2 particular instances. A Cave Johnson core appears in LEGO Dimensions, which is a non-canon appearance. A Cave Johnson cube was planned to appear in Portal 2 as well, where you would have found him as a cube and had to unplug him to use the cube to climb up a ledge, basically killing him in the process, which is pretty funny. Also I've noticed a picture found in a Redman layer that says, "Our founder," where there is an image of a person with the head covered by a companion cube. This might be Cave Johnson, could maybe be referring to him being, or being in a, companion cube. Then again, all the heads in these images are covered by companion cubes. So this would mean that all these people are companion cubes as well. In Aperture Desk Job, we saw Cave uploaded into a giant head. This is a non-canonical appearance though, as noted by Eric Wolper. Cave was definitely interested in mind uploading technology, and if he somehow managed to not die before said technology was invented, he would for sure have done it. Even if he died before, maybe he had his brain preserved and uploaded later. Overall, I see this theory as a 50-50 possibility. F-stop and Superliminal. A game called Superliminal was released in 2020 and uses very similar concept to the F-stop drafts. The game has overwhelmingly positive reviews as well. It is however not connected to Valve at all. If you are curious as to how F-stop would have played out, this is perhaps the best way to experience it, portal bumping. This is a speedrun mechanic that allows you to shoot portals through solid walls. There's a good example of how it's done in this video clip by Neil Noble on YouTube. This works for both Portal 1 and 2. Hidden Person in Cave Johnson painting. This is referring to this painting. Some people suspected this to be Shell, but it's more likely just a statue. Some saying it's that of a Greek god, which opens up a whole can of worms that is all the Greek mythology references. Which is cool, but please read through all the references on your own. Repulsion gel. Repulsion gel was developed with the purpose of lining the stomach of takers with a bouncy layer, so that food couldn't be digested and instead jump out of the mouth again. This is very in line for Aperture. Hotel decor changes time of day. A thing that perhaps doesn't get talked about enough. At the start of Portal 2, you see how the paintings change their appearance, specifically the time they're set in. While this might be one of the most well-known Easter eggs covered in pretty much all top 10 Easter egg videos, there really is no answer as to what this entails, as surely this isn't just an Easter egg, right? I don't have any theories myself, so feel free to comment what you think. PS3 PC crossplay. Back when Portal 2 launched, you could create a Steam account on the PS3 to play the co-op campaign with people on PC. This is no longer supported. Blue Sky. Blue Sky is a popular fanfiction based on Portal. It features Wheatley coming back to Earth after Portal 2 and being found by Shell, and Wheatley receiving a human-looking body in form of a hologram. Read it if you want. According to fannote.org, it's 169,000 words long, which, if you need reference, the script up until this point hasn't reached 10,000 words yet, meaning that it's pretty long. Party Escort Bot. A mysterious pink-eyed bot that was originally cut for Portal but later added to the game's ending in 2010. Before this update, the game did not feature Shell being dragged away. After the update, the Party Escort Bot was added to do just this. It isn't seen and instead only heard in Portal 1, with this being a placeholder model. It can be seen in the Lab Rat comic and in the Portal board game. Morgan Freeman Core. The Morgan Freeman Core, which would have been based on his character in Shawshank Redemption, was planned at one point during the development of Portal 2, in which Wheatley was to be killed off permanently after GLaDOS woke up. 6 cores would then have taken his place. To quote an article written by Games Radar Plus about this, a paranoid one who surrounded himself with defense turrets, but pointed them all one way, enabling Shell to easily slip behind him with a portal, pluck him off his pedestal and bash him against the wall before dropping him down the stairs. Another one that was planned was on Morgan Freeman Core. To quote again, this would have been a personality core that had been sitting in the same 20 by 20 foot space for several centuries, and was full of folksy, homespun wisdom about it, until you took him even a few feet out of this space, at which point his mind was blown and he became useless. Eventually he found his feet again, Wolpar said, although all of his wisdom and anecdotes would invariably relate back to the 20 by 20 foot spaces. Another one would also have been based on Quint from the movie Jaws. The entire concept was scrapped, partly due to playtesters wanting to spend more time with Wheatley instead. 3-tier plan. The 3-tier plan represents the program Cave Johnson came up with. Each tier represents a tested product. The first 2 were the Heimlich Countermaneuver and the Take a Wish Foundation initiatives. These were widely unpopular. Tier 3 was the only one that ended up sticking. Portals, mainly for the use of shower curtains. Thanks to this, they managed to keep their funding and were able to continue research on both the Portal and Heimlich Countermaneuver projects. All of this was revealed on the ApertureScience.com website, Tier 3 being a password required to get this information. Adrian Shepard. The actual name for the portal gun is Aperture Science Handheld Portal Device, which its acronym is ASHPD, which looks very similar to Adrian Shepard's name, protagonist of the Half-Life 1 spin-off Opposing Force, which to this day remains questionable if it's even canon, though the more favored opinion is that it is indeed canon. On Aperture Science keyboards, the letters EIPADSHRN are highlighted, which can be rearranged to spell Adrian Shepard. This led many to believe that this was a reference to Adrian Shepard, and that he could perhaps appear in some form. However, Valve game designer and team leader on Portal Kim Swift confirmed that this was just a coincidence. The depths. Getting lower now on the iceberg, you've now reached its deepest depths and you're unlikely to have cached any of this knowledge on your own. Basically, if we were still in the pre-information age of the internet, I can basically guarantee you'd know about none of these entries anymore. Rules of the Portal Gun. In Portal 1, GLaDOS introduces the Portal Gun to Shell and lists of 3 rules. The first being not to touch the operational end of the device. The second being not to look at the operational end of the device. The third being to not submerge the device into liquids, not even partially. And before being able to mention the final one, she is cut off, right after stating that the following would be the most important rule.
Most importantly, under no circumstances should you...
Aside from the fact that the third one about not being able to submerge it in liquids is somewhat retconned to Portal 2 due to being able to submerge it in gels, the most mysterious aspect is of course the 4th rule. The full raw sound file does actually exist though, and it sounds like this.
Most importantly, under no circumstances should you remove the device from the testing area.
So while of course it isn't guaranteed that this is confirmed canon, due to it being the exact sound file, it can be assumed that this is the true 4th rule. By the way, for some reason it is generally assumed that it's the 3rd rule that gets cut off, which I assume is because some consider the do not touch the operational end of the device and do not look at the operational end of the device as one rule, but if you listen to it, it sounds a lot more like she's listing off a total of 4 rules. Aperture, HEV and Gravity Gun. In the Lab Rat comics, you are at one point able to spot a gravity gun on a desk and a HEV charger. This somewhat supports a statement that Cave Johnson made where he said that Black Mesa stole some of their technology. Space Core having missing astronauts' consciousness. A theory that suggests that the Space Core got the consciousness of multiple missing astronauts uploaded into it. In 1968, Aperture Science was involved in a Senate hearing about missing astronauts, which will most likely have inspired this theory. However, we know that uploading minds wasn't possible until at least after 1982. Since that is when Cave Johnson ordered engineers to try and invent this technology. He also specifically mentioned that the technology to save him will not be completed before his death. And even if one is to assume Aperture desk job canon where he is indeed uploaded, the invention would still have taken place somewhere after at least 1982. If one is to assume this theory to be true, Aperture must have kept the astronauts imprisoned and hidden for at least 14 years. A more likely theory is that the Space Core was simply meant to be an astrophysicist core gone insane/corrupted. Hidden J in Portal 1. This is referring to this Hidden J found in Portal 1, which is most likely a signature left by Valve level designer Jeep Barnett. Art Therapy in single player. Art Therapy is the name of extra co-op levels added by the peer-reviewed DLC. It features a small storyline that takes place after the Portal 2 co-op one. This entry seems to imply that you can play these single player, which surely is possible with some trickery but not intended. Boarding Borealis in Flash version. In the Portal Flash version, the final exit sign shows a ship, most likely the Borealis, that the player is implied to board after the ending. Also in the aforementioned Still Alive version of Portal 1, specifically the Flash version maps that were ported back to source, there is a level where you get to take a look at the Borealis, still in Aperture. A pretty cool sight, although the Borealis looks at least somewhat hastily thrown together. Weekly VGA speeches. During the 2011 VGAs, all the nominees for Character of the Year had special videos made for them, one for their nomination and one in case they won. This included the original voice actors and actual animations made in the style of their respective games. The Joker of Batman Arkham City ended up winning. But the videos of Wheatley are both available on YouTube. In them he is still stuck in space, which fits into what happened at the end of Portal 2. Procedurally generated tests. At one point, Valve was experimenting with procedurally generated tests. Commands of this are left over in the game files. Mainly these ones. This obviously did not end up in the game. A great video made by Lavagic Productions covers the leftover code of this concept in detail and actually managed to get it working somewhat. The video is in Russian but it has English subtitles. He uploaded the working map to the Portal 2 workshop, where you can still find and play it. Aperture invented lasers. In the 50 section of Shaft 09, there is a Cave Johnson line that says this.
If you've cut yourself at all in the course of these tests, you might have noticed that your blood is pure gasoline. That's normal. We've been shooting you with an invisible laser that's supposed to turn blood into gasoline, so all that means is it's working.
He seems to casually mention lasers, as if the test subject in question is supposed to know about them. However, lasers weren't invented until 1960. So this would imply that Aperture invented lasers. Though, given the fact that Cave Johnson is not actively bragging about the fact that Aperture did just that, it isn't possible that Aperture did. So this is either simply an oversight by the writers, or Cave Johnson recorded his lines only after the invention of lasers. There is no in between. Greg. Greg is the assistant of Cave Johnson in the Perpetual Testing Initiative, aka the Multiverse DLC. He is credited with coming up with the multiple universe theory. We only ever hear a muffled voice of Greg, but we have one image of him thanks to the Portal board game, which reuses the Magnuson model, which gives it the canon until proven otherwise status at best. Greg was also a cut character before being reintroduced. He was eventually replaced by Caroline because they didn't want to go through hiring another voice actor, instead opting for Ellen McLean of GLaDOS to fill this role as well. This actually resulted in the writers coming up with the idea to make Caroline be the template of GLaDOS. GLaDOS supposed to be hanging woman. People with severe porn addictions have noticed that GLaDOS could be seen as a bound woman hanging upside down. The most popular artwork depiction of which I definitely can't show here. There are some more safe for work iterations of it as well though, including a pretty cool cosplay, which I prefer a lot more. The theory itself isn't awful on the surface level. Caroline's mind was uploaded into this pretty much immobile robot, where one might see similarities to being constrained by ropes. Then again, she does have access to the full facility, which doesn't really render her as trapped as much as the metaphor would require for it to work. Thus, I deem it unlikely that her design was actually meant to represent a hanging woman and more just a coincidence. Portal 2 fake endings. During playtesting of Portal 1, there were a small number of players that would just let Shell fall into the fire pit at the part where you would go behind the scenes. This was a satisfying ending for some, so they thought about catering to those people as well in Portal 2 by introducing multiple fake endings throughout the game. One of them would have been about 2 minutes into the game, where the ending credits would play just reviewing those 2 minutes. Another one would have used the moon concept early on, where the player could get sucked out into space and have that be an ending. These endings were eventually cut because it would have been a struggle to think of so many endings. The moon ending eventually got reused and replaced the worst ending they had before, Shell's turret marriage. At one point there were plans to find a tribe of turrets in Portal 2, similar to how there are untouched tribes in real life on remote islands. Shell was to help them out, to which the giant animal turret king, which you do actually see in Portal 2, would marry off one of the turrets to Shell. This bride turret would have followed the player throughout the game, similar to how Watson did in the Sherlock Holmes Nemesis game. Why this was removed is unknown. The Animal King turret also appears in LEGO Dimensions and in the final opera, Hover Turret. There were once plans to include a turret in Portal 2 called the hover turret. The code for this turret is still in the game, though it will simply produce an error when trying to spawn it. Despite the name being hover turret, it would actually be attached from a rope on the ceiling and would slowly rotate while idle, if so configured in the level editor. Once it spots a player, it would rotate to follow them and fire a blue laser that could kill the player. When dropped from a height of about 8 feet or higher, it would explode once it impacts the ground. A trio of these would appear in the intro for the core hub beta of Portal 2. They would have the following exchange. Hey, what's going on over there? I didn't see anything. Why am I not surprised? When broken, they would be destroyed into glass football chunks, which leads me straight to the next entry. Football. Football is a cut feature from Portal 2's co-op mode. The entities for this mode still exist, and it would involve the players trying to score by throwing the ball into the other player's socket. It would also break upon touching the floor. The name football is a Spanish word for football, or soccer for you Americans. There would also have been an exploding version of the football. Honestly, this sounds fun. I am sad this was cut. Aquarium. There is a seemingly random ad for the Oregon Coast Aquarium. It features a fish obsessed with aquariums to the point where it simply repeats the word aquarium.
Aquarium. Aquarium. Aquarium. I wanna go. Aquarium. I wanna go to the aquarium.
You may immediately notice how this is basically the Space Core but fish. This is because the Space Core was inspired by this fish. Shell dies in Portal 2's ending. There is another video by the game theorist that explores the science behind the final cutscene, specifically about the part where Shell is flung onto the moon. The conclusion is that while dangerous, she could survive. Thus, this theory has nothing to base itself on. But hey! Airboat percent. Airboat percent refers to a beam category of Portal speedruns in which you use the command chcreate airboat to spawn airboats of Half-Life 2. This command is actually not classified as a cheat. Thus, it can be entered without disabling achievements or anything. As the command spawns an airboat in front of you, you can use it to phase through doors. This leads to the world record speedrun only being 30 minutes and 40 seconds long. Walking turret. The walking turret was cut late into Portal 1's development. Concept art of it was found during the Potato Foods Day ARG in 2011. Valve animator Karen Prell explained that it was cut because it didn't work well as a game mechanic. GLaDOS worked with the Combine. This is again a baseless theory, but it can only be assumed GLaDOS knows of the Combine given her referencing them in the finale of Portal 1. There is nothing hinting towards her working with them. In fact, the opposite is more likely to be true. As she says, she's the only thing between us and them. Early GLaDOS amnesia concept. At one point during development, GLaDOS was seemingly planned to lose her memory. There are early animations we have footage of today, including voice lines. GLaDOS behaved similar to a child or a dog, not remembering how she was defeated by Shell. Here's the footage.
I think I used to be bigger. There was a party. Something happened. With food. Starts with a C. Cereal!
When this was made public, the word cereal quickly became a meme. Error mod. The error mod tells the story of your regular old creepypasta of, oh, my game is haunted. However, in this case, you can actually download this game and play it for yourself. The immersion is kept high and it's promoted as a weird version of Portal they randomly came across. And it was released to some pretty great reviews. So if you're in for a horror experience, check that mod out. Chicken boss battle. On one of the clipboards in the game, you can find an image of what looks to be a giant chicken skeleton. It is an inside joke in reference to F-Stop, which was to involve a storyline where Aperture tested on chickens, which led to a giant chicken boss fight. There is concept out of it as well. It was most likely cancelled alongside F-Stop as a whole. Personality cores used to be Aperture employees. The idea that personality cores used to be Aperture employees is fairly plausible. Uploading people into robots isn't unheard of, as we have seen with GLaDOS and the cut Cave Johnson core. So the idea that employees that pass away get uploaded into cores could be a fact in the lore. Either the people really used to be the way they are as cores, or they were modified to be that way. Say the Space Core. Was this past employee really that fanatic about space? Or was the liking for space cranked up by other still alive Aperture employees? Obviously, none of this is confirmed, but I personally deem it likely. Male protagonist in Portal 1 trailer. In the first Portal teaser trailer, we see this clip of the protagonist running around in circles through portals. While in motion this could maybe be Shell, by pausing you'll notice that it's seemingly a male, mostly noticeable due to the fact that it has the stature of the males of Half-Life 2, which he was most likely recycled from. Here's a better image of this character as well. Cut Garfield comic. Trying to come up with ideas for the Portal 2 co-op story, they experimented with a detailed one in which GLaDOS would send the two robot protagonists to go find human artifacts. The idea was that GLaDOS wanted to make the robots more human-like for testing purposes. They would eventually find a snippet of a comic and bring it back to GLaDOS. The comic was an obvious parody of Garfield dubbed Dorfeld. Both of the protagonists and GLaDOS would fail to find what is funny about it, so GLaDOS would add onto it to make it funny. And so the comic goes...
Dorfeld, that was my lasagna. No, brother. I hope you enjoyed my lasagna, Dorfeld. Please know that I've activated the neurotoxin emitters in this room. I've made a lot of poor decisions in my life.
The whole idea was scrapped because the developers figured that while a single-player campaign has a captivated audience, two friends playing together would be quite the opposite of that, and they would most likely talk over all the story elements. Thus, they decided to rethink it to the very basic elements of a story we have in the co-op campaign today. Shell is a clone. There is nothing strictly ruling out that Shell couldn't be a clone. It seems unlikely though, especially given what I just explained about the Portal 2 co-op story. The co-op story revolves around the fact that GLaDOS can't get testing data out of robots. And at the end of the story, Peabody and Atlas manage to find the vault, which finally gives GLaDOS access to the human test subjects again. The question would then become why she didn't just clone Shell if she had the means to. This is really the biggest wrench that gets thrown into any clone theory, and also the one that I think disproves it. Though it can be theorized that maybe GLaDOS doesn't see testing clones as science, given that she also claims they have no soul in the lab rat comic. Flux Capacitor Potato Experiment. During the visit to the Employee Daycare Center in Portal 2, one of the tests features what looks to be a parody of a flux capacitor from Back to the Future. Portal Easter Egg.wmv. Portal Easter Egg.wmv is a video uploaded to YouTube almost 3 years ago, though it is purposefully made to look like a video you'd see uploaded around the time Portal was released. It's part of an ARG told on the channel of the uploader Stellar1, who has previously covered ARGs and video game mysteries. Portal Still Alive sequel. This would kinda just be Portal 2. I don't really get this entry, unless it's referring to a sequel of the song, which also has nothing to base itself on. Mantis Men. Mantis Men are a canon creature in the Portal universe. During tests back when Aperture Science was still called Aperture Science Innovators, they created Mantis Men during tests involving mantis DNA on the human body. These Mantis Men were then also tested, most notably, how long it would take to kill an army of them using rifles. All of this was mentioned in Portal 2. In the multiverse, there is an alternate universe where sapient mantises ruled the Earth and did the test in reverse and created man-mantises by injecting test subjects with human DNA. There's another universe where Mantis Men took over the facility as well. The first time they were actually seen was in LEGO Dimensions, where a quest involves killing 30 of them. Though LEGO Dimensions is as uncanon as it gets, if you are to assume the multiverse canon, this could surely be one of them though. They also reappeared in Aperture Desk Job in the form of a bobblehead. Chariots. During the travel through the multiverse, Cave Johnson would identify himself as the one true Cave Johnson by saying chariots, because that's something only he would say. After realizing other Cave Johnsons might also say this, he starts saying chariots, companion cube singing. By no-clipping into the companion cube at Portal 2, or just standing really close to it, you'll hear a song. It kind of sounds like the companion cube itself is singing. It also kind of sounds like a cat, which would play into the Redman's drawing of a companion cube with whiskers and cat ears. Catboy Cube, Super 8 teaser. The movie Super 8 has a pretty big scene in which a train derails. In the Portal 2 extras you are able to see and play the perspective from inside the train as it derails. Also featuring a voice clip from the movie that fits in perfectly. J.J. Abrams directed the movie, and given his relationship with Gabe Newell and thus Valve, it was probably just a friendly favor. It also played into an ARG centered around Super 8. The map is short but also really well done, so consider checking it out if you haven't. Aperture Red Phone Protocol. The Red Phone Protocol was put in place in case GLaDOS was to become sentient and or godlike, which required an employee to sit by a red phone on a desk in the entrance hall of the central AI chamber. This protocol obviously failed in the end, as GLaDOS did manage to take over the whole facility. This red phone is present in Portal 1, with its cord cut. Sabotage maybe? Also there's a white version of the phone, which is unused. Aperture tests were psychological. We never really learn the true reason as to why we're being tested, or anyone is being tested for that matter. One theory being that it's about the psychological effect it has on humans. This could also play to the fact that GLaDOS desperately needs humans in the co-op campaign, as only those could show psychological effects. I personally think the reason behind all the tests in the games is just GLaDOS being hard-coded into doing testing with no real purpose. But scrap single-player DLC. I couldn't find any details about this anywhere. If anyone has an idea, let me know in the comments and I'll add it to the description. Tripwire turrets. The rocket turret has a configurable mode called Tripwire mode. This would make the sentry aim in a fixed direction without following a target entity. Once someone runs through its beam, it would fire a rocket straight ahead. This went unused in Portal. Bottom of the iceberg. Even now at the bottom of the iceberg, we are still only at our antepenultimate segment, meaning third to last. If you're aware of any of these, good job. Dynacorp. In the lab, we see that Aperture is a division of Dynacorp Industries on the blueprint of Atlas. A company we don't know anything about besides this one mention stating that they own Aperture Science. The lab is most likely another side project filled with fun non-canon things, as Eric Wolpa put it. And it's also set in a pocket universe of what is most likely an alternate universe. So we don't know if Dynacorp also owns Aperture in the main universe. It is to note, however, that in the lab, the line, a division of Dynacorp Industries, is placed under the Aperture Science logo, which does not appear in Portal or Portal 2. Maybe in the main universe, Dynacorp tried to buy out Aperture, but failed, and the lab is an alternate universe where Dynacorp did buy out Aperture. Also worth noting is how Wallace Breen is the administrator of Black Mesa, not the CEO, meaning that Dynacorp could also own Black Mesa and they merely put Wallace Breen in charge of the facility. Then again, there is no line saying a division of Dynacorp Industries under the Black Mesa logo either. Wheatley is 25% corrupt. During the final battle with Wheatley, 3 cores are installed on Wheatley to make him corrupt. Each core is 25% corrupt. However, the corruptness starts at 50% upon installing the space core. Either the space core is 50% corrupt on its own, or Wheatley is 25% corrupt himself. If this is true, how Wheatley escaped being put in the pile of corrupt cores is unknown. It could maybe have been Wheatley who decided to scavenge up corrupt cores and place them in a pile under his lair. Cat Graveyard. Cat Graveyard refers to an event in the Lab Rat comics. Not only does Ratman mention that he did many Schrodinger's cat experiments, which led to Aperture Science having a cat graveyard, there's also a flashback in which a Bring Your Cat to Work Day is mentioned. It is also seemingly implied that this was the day GLaDOS gassed the scientists and therefore anyone inside the Aperture Science facility. In case you're confused and thought it was Bring Your Daughter to Work Day instead, she only tried to do the neurotoxin attack on that day, but immediately got stopped by having a morality core attached to her. If we are to assume it was Cat Day, which is heavily implied to be the case, there must be a ton of dead cats somewhere in the facility. For my personal headcanon, I'm simply gonna assume all the cats made it out alive, as that will make me sleep a lot better. Cores fear GLaDOS. We actually don't know what most cores think of GLaDOS. While every core is different, we do know that Wheatley had a panic attack when Shell walked into GLaDOS' chamber. With this being our only proper sample of a core, it can be determined that at least some, if not all, cores fear GLaDOS, and obviously don't want her to return. But Shell Soup. This is so obscure, I almost believe it's just a fake entry by the creator to tell if someone else stole from them. The only thing I found relating to both Shell and Soup was this Shell cosplay by someone on Reddit called Soup 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 Soup. I mean, it's a great cosplay. I just don't know if this is what the entry meant to refer to. There is also the Soup core, which is only found in the lab. Caroline led Aperture from late 80s to late 90s. In Portal 2, Cave Johnson says this.
The point is, if we can store music on a compact disc, why can't we store a man's intelligence and personality on one? So I have the engineers figuring that out now. Brain mapping, artificial intelligence. We should have been working on it 30 years ago. I will say this, and I'm going to say it on tape so everybody hears it 100 times a day. If I die before you people can pour me into a computer, I want Carolyn to run this place. Now she'll argue. She'll say she can't. She's modest like that, but you make her. Hell, put her in my computer, I don't care.
My interpretation of this is that if Cave couldn't be uploaded to a computer, he wants Human Caroline to become CEO, and that he'd allow for Caroline to be uploaded to his computer if needed. This could explain why Old Aperture and New Aperture look so different, with Caroline commissioning the Enrichment Center to be built above Old Aperture when she became CEO. Caroline also seems to have turned the company around, considering that the Enrichment Center appears to be vastly larger than all of Old Aperture. And given that Aperture had to resort to testing their own employees back in the 80s and now they had supposedly 10,000 subjects in storage. As for why Caroline ended up in GLaDOS, perhaps Human Caroline got a terminal illness and the scientists stuffed her into GLaDOS to keep her alive, against her consent. Lots of people tend to assume Caroline never led Aperture for some reason, even though there's plenty of evidence to support this. Obviously, still not fully confirmed though. Shell's voice in Portal 1. In the Portal series, Shell is mute, much like Gordon Freeman. However, there is an exception to this. In Portal 1, if the player stands under a cube dropper and allows a cube to be dropped on their head, this happens. This is a reused line from Half-Life 2 when a female citizen gets hurt. So if you really want to, you can call Mary Kay Irvin the voice actress of Shell, as she did the female damage sounds of Half-Life 2. Mega Man era. There is a phase in Portal 2's development referred to as Mega Man era, or similar. We know basically nothing about this, even less than the Core Hub era, which is why it is this low on the iceberg and why we're already moving on to the next entry, Headcrab in Portal 2. This image has been spreading around the Portal community for as long as Portal 2 has been released. It seems to show a headcrab falling down an elevator where you'd usually see lots of other debris as well. It has been confirmed to be fake, even though many people swear by it being real. There is no sign of any headcrabs in the level files. None of them. Wheatley references G-Man. There is an unused line of Wheatley that we learned through an interview of Eric Wolper, who said in response to the question if Ratman is Gordon Freeman, "Oh shit, I don't even know about that. Probably not. I hope it's not Gordon Freeman. You know, we took it out, but we did have a line when Wheatley first woke you up, where he said, nobody's been around here for a while, but there's an old guy walking around with a briefcase looking for you. We decided we were just making trouble for ourselves with that one. So this concept is scrapped, but was at one point planned to be included. Cut rape scene rumor. There was once a false rumor going around that there was a rape scene cut from the game because J.K. Simmons, voice actor of Cave Johnson, refused to read it. This is just not true. Something somewhat similar was originally to be included though. Cave Johnson states in Portal 2 that he knows that Caroline will not want her mind uploaded into GLaDOS, but that they should still do it. There was then a scene planned in which you would hear Caroline being forced to whatever machine uploads her mind, much to her protest. This was cut eventually, probably simply due to it being too dark. But yes, there was never a planned rape scene. Test Chimp A12 and SPA302. Portal levels, and also pretty much all levels made by Valve for any game, follow a strict naming formula. In Portal 1, Most of them were called test chamber _A_ followed by a number. The levels with this specific naming convention start at 00 and end at 15. However, the level number 12 is missing. A similar thing happens in Portal 2, where there are maps called SPA300, SPA301, and SPA303. SPA302 is missing. For this case, we know what it is. SPA301 was split into 2 maps before being merged into one again. They never bothered renaming them. The one of Portal 1, however, is unknown. One theory is this. Most chambers in Portal 1 introduce a new mechanic. The level before introduced floor turrets. This one could maybe have introduced ceiling turrets. There is however one single result I could find through a ton of digging as to what this chamber could have been. I found this on a Discord, who quoted it from a Discord from someone who just claimed it, so take this with a huge grain of salt. Apparently, there was a stream by Tyler McVicker of the Valve News Network where he asked Valve if there are any cut chambers in Portal. Jeep Barnett came with an answer and said that there was a cut chamber with a cage of energy pellets flying around and a button inside. The goal was to get the cube on the button. The energy balls would come flying out of the portal placed in the chamber. This is the only source of what test chamber A12 might be. Again, the source on this is so obscure it might as well have been written in a fortune cookie, so take it with as much salt as you'd find in the enrichment shafts in 1944. Portal 2 takes place in an alternate universe. The question if Portal 2 takes place in an alternate universe is relative and depending on if you take the peer review multiverse into canon. If you do, then yes, it is definitely alternate to some universe. In a true multiverse there is no main one unless specified otherwise, which is not the case in Portal. In reality we are just one of many, nothing special, which is also what I personally specifically hate about multiverses. Blue briefcase. The texture of the blue briefcase of TF2 is included and unused in the files of Portal 1. It's most likely simply misplaced. Pirate speak. There are some remnants of pirate speech in the subtitled files of Portal 2. These can be enabled by adding language pirate to the game's launch options. Only some lines are translated, most defaulting to normal English. Sparta sign. A texture of a wet floor sign is found unused in the files of Portal 1. Specifically, it is drawn over and added to instead say, "This is Sparta," with a person kicking the slipping guy illustration, making it look like a very popular meme of a scene from the movie 300. This meme is really old and outdated now, and I doubt most of the people watching still even know it. So, good thing it went unused. 20th test chamber. Portal 1 ends at test chamber 19. Now, what if there was a 20th one? Nah, I'm not even gonna pretend like this is an interesting entry, though it is to know that if chamber 12 wasn't cut, we'd have a total of 20. Shell is stuck in aperture. There's a theory that the wheat field and sky seen in the end of Portal 2 is actually a fake room inside the facility. A mod known as Thinking with Time Machines explores this possibility, where the player places Shell after Portal 2. Overall, this is unlikely, and here's the message of Portal 2's ending. Camera.vtf/HUD-icon camera VTF. Camera VTF and HUD-icon camera VTF are both remnants of f-stop that can be found in Portal 2. They show textures of both a camera weapon and its HUD-icon. Also found is a HUD-icon of a hand holding a taken picture. More Aperture employees survived GLaDOS attack. This isn't impossible, if unlikely. Doug Redman survived as well, so why couldn't there also be others? It very most certainly isn't a lot of people who survived, as otherwise we would probably have encountered at least one survivor. Or seen something hinting at there being more survivors. Red Portal. If you want to change the keybind to fire the orange portal in Portal 1, you'll see that the relevant bind is called Fire Red Portal. While there are many shades between red and orange where people may argue on which of the both it truly is, this does not go for the orange of Shell's portal gun, which most likely means that the orange portal used to be a red one before being changed, and they forgot to rename the bind. In the co-op mode for Portal, the secondary fire portal or P-body has a dark red color, thus we eventually truly got the red portal. Schrödinger's Cube. Schrödinger's Cube was introduced in the peer review DLC. It would involve 2 reflection cubes that are linked to one another. If a laser enters one cube, it would also come out the other. Same goes to them being painted by any gel. While it's fully implemented, not only did it go unused, it is also hard-coded in the game that they get turned to regular reflection cubes once they are spawned. They also have a custom texture variant, though it's merely a missing one. Going by comments found in the code, Valve planned to re-enable these cubes in the Perpetual Testing Initiative update, but they forgot to do so though. The Portal 2 Community Edition, which is a mod that mainly serves to give people more options in making mods, re-enables this cube. It's also included in the popular mod, Portal Revolution. Project Time. I looked through every wiki, Discord and Reddit to find what Project Time could possibly mean and I found nothing. If you have any info, let me know. Geothermal Power Plant. There is an unused texture of a sign in Test Chef 9 of Portal 2 referencing a geothermal power plant. It says this: notice, employees are reminded that there is nothing of interest present in the geothermal power wing. Any employees investigating further will be terminated immediately due to the complete lack of anything of note present therein, which isn't out of place in Aperture. It also raises the question what the hell is in the geothermal power wing. There's another texture of a stencil saying Geothermal Power Plant 3. Aperture body count. While body count often refers to something else these days, in this case it means the number of people who were killed by direct or indirect result of Aperture Science's doings. Even ignoring the eventual neurotoxin gassing, Aperture Science performed a lot of dangerous experiments beforehand, so it can only be assumed that lots of people died in their hands, or rather, test chambers. Aperture dug too deep. It is unknown what too deep could mean in this case. In reality, due to the exact length of the elevators not being known due to them fading in and out with a loading screen, we don't know exactly how deep Aperture reaches into the underground. Going by the spots on Reddit that lined up all the levels and connected the minimum length of the elevators, Aperture Science reaches at least 6,278 meters, or over 20,000 feet below the ground. The deepest underground facility that exists in real life, that we know of, is the Sanford Underground Research Facility, reaching almost 1.5 kilometers, or almost 1 mile. There is also the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory in Canada that was 2.1 kilometers beneath the ground, around 1.1 miles. The deepest mine ever dug is the Emponing Gold Mine at 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles. The deepest areas of Aperture obviously being a repurposed salt mine. However, the deepest hole ever dug was the Kola Super Deep Borehole SG3 at 12,262 meters or 40,230 feet, almost twice as deep as Aperture Science reaches. In reality, this entry falls flat because we don't know what too deep is referring to. Going by another iceberg explanation document, it seems that this was meant to refer to some sort of curse that they dug up that caused Aperture to fall. This wouldn't make a whole lot of sense though, given that it used to be salt mines already beforehand. Otherwise, it could maybe be too deep to get down to, too deep to finance it all, or too deep because of geological forces. To answer them all, Aperture has pretty advanced elevators and of course also portals, so no, getting down shouldn't be a problem. Aperture Science did do badly financially, as we learned from Cave Johnson, so yeah, maybe digging too deep took a part in that. In terms of geological forces, pressure, temperature due to Earth's core, ventilation and geological stability could become a problem, even if not reaching tectonic plates just yet. Tectonic plates only start at about 70 kilometers or 50 miles below the Earth. All of these are not unsolvable though, especially given the engineering marvels we get to see in Aperture Science. So in reality, no, I don't think Aperture dug too deep personally. They should have gone deeper. Portal 1 Zen ending. The finale of Portal 1 was originally said to be a lot different. We know this due to the fact that the skybox of the map Escape 01, the penultimate map of Portal 1, is set to the same as that of Half-Life 1's C4A1, a Zen level. It was also specifically renamed to Sky Escape 01, which is how we know this wasn't just a remnant or anything. In leaked Portal 1 map files, you can find a disabled Wisp group. Wisp groups are used to enable and disable certain parts in a level file as you wish, which shows Portal 1 was set to end with the reveal that Shell was in Zen, which opens a lot of questions. Reicter Overtime did a great video on this topic in case you're interested about more on this. Weekly is Intelligence Core. The Intelligence Core is one of GLaDOS' personality cores in Portal and it kinda looks similar to Weekly, which is what leads to the connection between it and Weekly being made. Which, besides the fact that it gets incinerated by the player, Weekly is also ironically the exact opposite of the Intelligence Core, an intelligence dampening sphere. Don't Say Goodbye. Don't Say Goodbye is a lyric of the song called GLaDOS Song, a song written and performed by Ellen McLean, voice actress of GLaDOS. It was offered to Valve to include in Portal 2 as an Easter egg by her and her husband John Patrick Lowry. Known for his work as the voice actor of the TF2 Sniper to name just one example, Valve however never ended up using it. The song gained popularity again after Jagger Graving of Motherboard asked them if they would ever release the track while writing the article GLaDOS and the Sniper, a voice acting love story. They did, once they had the time to in 2015, uploaded on John Patrick Lowry's channel.
You won't say goodbye, never say goodbye.
The song itself is really beautiful and also the only song ever written by Ellen McLean, funnily enough, who said that she wrote most of the song in her head while in the bathtub and then worked out the details while taking a long walk. It's basically a love song written by GLaDOS to Shell, which, while very beautiful, didn't quite fit GLaDOS' character, specifically because she'd never mentioned her love for Shell this openly. Would have fit perfectly as an Easter egg though, definitely. The track also eventually got a remix that you can find on the YouTube channel of Harry101 UK, in which Ellen McLean got autotune to sound like GLaDOS. Body preparation recipe. The only reference I found to this was in a document that explains a shorter Portal Iceberg. It mentions that in Cut Light of Portal 1, GLaDOS lists a cake recipe that sounds more like the recipe to prepare a human body. I couldn't find them anywhere though, no matter how deep I looked. So take this with a grain of salt. As much as you'd put on a human body you'd prepare. Space Core and Skyrim. When Skyrim first opened up their Steam workshop, Valve collaborated with Bethesda to make a mod that adds a space core to Skyrim. A fun mod that involves a questline where you try to get it back to space, which I won't spoil the fate of. Tartarus 09. Tartarus 09 is a location at the bottom of Aperture's salt mine. It is a representation of Tartarus in Greek mythology. In actual lore, Tartarus is likely just a location in the salt mine where nothing was built. Something interesting, however, is the enrichment center is visible from the bottom of Tartarus, despite the fact Shaft 9 extends much further upwards, suggesting that the enrichment center was sort of built around the shafts, like this. Tartarus 9 is also the last leftover bit of what developers initially intended for the old Aperture area. We learned from the Portal 2 official guide that the entire old Aperture section was planned to only consist of exploration, though playtesters quickly became bored, wanting to solve more puzzles. This is when test shafts were introduced. Portal 1 Mandela Effect. In July of 2023, a now deleted user made a post on r/portal claiming that they had remembered Portal 1's ending much differently. This person remembered playing the game as normal, But upon reaching the room preceding the GLaDOS chamber, there was no glass bridge, and rather a path to the surface. The user described in detail what they remembered seeing. Another user known as u/hoppn claims to have had the same experience, though I couldn't find anyone else talking about this. Is it just a Mandela effect, or was there truly an alternate ending in the PS3 version of Portal? Perhaps we'll never know. Abyss. The Abyss used to be the last category, which probably tells you enough you need to know about this category. Lots of deep theories, unsettling thoughts, and lore questions and theories nobody would even dare to think of. GLaDOS with arms. Videos of early Portal 2 animation tests show GLaDOS with arms, much to the discomfort of many. It does raise a question why she doesn't have some though. Android hell is a real place. Given the sheer size of aperture science, it can't be ruled out that there isn't some place specifically to torture robots. So maybe it is. Wheatley is mentally ill, not stupid. There's a user on Reddit known as the Wheatley Whisperer, who infodumps Portal though, mostly surrounding Wheatley. Their main point is that Wheatley is mentally ill, not stupid. You see, despite being canonically designed to be stupid, Wheatley is shown to be quite smart, the theory being that he is mentally ill. It can be theorized that the other cores outcast him for supposedly being stupid, resulting in him being determined to prove he's not a moron. But core corruption. GLaDOS, Wheatley, and these guys all have a level of corruption, which can range from 0 to 100%, 100% being fully corrupt. This corruptness rating has shown to be extremely inconsistent, so how does it work? Well, one theory goes that corruptness is a redundant measurement of how well a core is performing its designated task. It's how scientists would measure the performance of a core. They'd give it a directive and a rating system of how well they fulfill that directive. Wheatley's directive is to be stupid, and he's corrupt because he's not stupid. GLaDOS's directive is to be Caroline, and she's corrupt because she's not Caroline. And well, these guys, whatever they're doing is not what they're designed for, leading them to be corrupt. Perhaps, as mentioned earlier, Space Core was supposed to be an astrophysicist and went insane. Perhaps Rick was a medieval adventurer and became a cowboy. Perhaps Fact Core was a fun fact dispenser that ended up having incorrect facts. But the mainframe. This is an interesting aspect that is often overlooked. The mainframe is the device a central core is attached to, and it seems to drastically alter the mental state of whoever is in it. GLaDOS starts out as insane, is normal when in a potato, and goes insane again when put back in her body at the end of Portal 2. Wheatley starts out as normal, goes insane, and then is normal again when in space. This has led many fans to theorize that neither GLaDOS or Wheatley are evil, but rather the mainframe makes whoever the central core is become evil. This is further reinforced with how Wheatley and GLaDOS discuss the pressure that the body puts on them, and with how Wheatley sounds like he's about to cry when fighting Shell. Also worth noting is how the mainframe seems to work when choosing core transfers. The mainframe only seems to initialize a core transfer when another core is detected, and automatically chooses the least corrupt core as the new core. Wheatley is 25% corrupt compared to GLaDOS's 80, and Wheatley had to have 3 other corrupt cores installed on him to allow GLaDOS to be put back in charge. G-Man works for Aperture. We know very little about the G-Man, and while I don't believe in the theory that he works for Aperture myself, let me entertain it. Remember the Aperture dug too deep theory? What if at the bottom of the salt mine, the G-Man was discovered in some form or another, bringing him into our world? What if he decided to work for Aperture? What if he's the one pulling all the strings? What if he was sent to Black Mesa in order to find someone capable of getting back the Borealist? Far-fetched? Yeah, but who knows? In reality, I would find the reveal that the G-Man is simply an employee of Aperture rather disappointing, especially as it would imply that Aperture Science holds a lot of power in the universe. LEGO Dimensions is canon. Given that the multiverse apparently exists in Portal, you could argue that there is an alternate universe that is just LEGO Dimensions, and that LEGO Dimensions is a story about jumping from universe to universe in Portal's multiverse. Overall, I don't even want to consider this, so let's move on. Portal 1 isn't canon. Given how Portal 2 retcons the design of objects, the layout of test chambers, and the relative location of the test chambers to each other in the GLaDOS room, you could argue that Portal 1 isn't canon. Given that Portal has a multiverse, maybe Portal 1 is an alternate universe where these designs and layouts are canon, and Portal 2 is an alternate universe. In fact, since Half-Life and Portal share a universe, the multiverse is also canon in Half-Life, so given the amount of things that were retconned with Half-Life 1, maybe Half-Life 1 isn't canon. Maybe the low-poly designs are also canonically part of Half-Life 1's universe. Maybe every Half-Life and Portal mod is canon somewhere in the multiverse. Maybe every picture of art exists in its own universe. In fact, that has to be true, as the multiverse has infinite possibilities. Potatoes are divine intervention. This kinda just sounds like a potato equals random equals funny joke, and I truly believe it is, as I have no possible clue as to what it is supposed to mean. Maybe divine intervention that Wheatley decided to put GLaDOS into a potato instead of just destroying her? I also looked through all the potato experiments in the employee daycare center and nothing could be found there regarding divine intervention. If any of you have a clue, let me know. Every test is personalized. This most likely goes back to the same theory that every single game has about it pretty much. The whole, every copy of blah 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 is personalized. A more fun aspect to look at this is to assume that in the world of Aperture, every single test gets changed to suit the exact person getting tested. This goes back to the theory that the purpose of tests in the world of Portal is to test human psychology. If this is true, small personalizations on test chambers would be useful to fit the exact needs of these human minds, which wouldn't be impossible, given how powerful whatever AI is that is plugged into the mainframe. not only in terms of knowledge, but also in capabilities to restructure aperture science. GLaDOS is breaking up with Shell in Portal 2. This theory obviously requires you to not believe that Caroline is the mother of Shell, which in reality you shouldn't do anyways, as a lot of evidence points against it. The theory that GLaDOS is breaking up with Shell in Portal 2 is an interesting one that actually has quite a few hints pointing towards it. We obviously don't know a lot about Shell's side, given she doesn't talk, but GLaDOS gives us a lot of sides. She obviously on one side hates Shell, but also doesn't want her to leave, even ignoring the song written by Alan McLean. I could try to squish all the evidence and counter-evidence into a small text, but rather I leave it up to a video made by Ozzy Flowel, made in collaboration with Human Weekly's Left Toenail. What a name. I suggest checking the video out. If you want only the conclusion, it's maybe. Yeah, that's how it usually goes with Valve. Shell only slept for 9 days. This is unlikely, given how much the facility changed in her absence. Anything shorter than a couple decades is a stretch. 9 days is a whole different story. And while we obviously can't fully rule anything out, it seems like 50,000 years is the true answer. Portal is all just Ratman's hallucinations. Imagine Portal 3 releases and it ends in Ratman waking up. Ratman is on the moon. The Lab Rat comics ended before Portal 2 with Ratman out of meds and going to sleep in a relaxation chamber. In reality, anything could happen from here. Ratman had quite the obsession with the moon, even stating that he'd rather have gone there than to help build GLaDOS. Aside from an artwork of Ratman found in Portal 2 that references an Armstrong cube, the Final Transmission achievement in Portal 2 has a hidden image in its sound file that shows a companion cube on the moon, which might hint towards the theory that Ratman is actually on the moon, especially given that the title of the achievement is Final Transmission, an obvious reference to the Transmissions Received achievement of Portal 1. The achievement icon also has a rat on it, further referencing Ratman, and given the nature of transmissions, it has to come from somewhere. This basically all but confirms that Ratman is still around somewhere. There are 3 realistic scenarios here. Number 1, Ratman is still around and simply sent a random image Aperture once took on the moon. Boo! Number 2, it's just an Easter egg with no meaning. Boo! Or number 3, Ratman actually made it to the moon somehow and managed to survive at least long enough to send back an image. Yeah! Feel free to choose whatever option you like the most for your headcanon. In the virtual Endbug Portal. In the virtual Endbug Portal is real. It's made with an AI voice replica of GLaDOS. Check out the full video if you'd like. By the way, why do we all agree that AI generated images suck, but AI voice seems so much more accepted? O Fortuna original Fire Pit song. During the ride to the fire pit near the end of Portal 1, the sound entity that plays the song 4000 degrees Kelvin, that you're also hearing right now, is actually called O Fortuna, and so is the sound name. This means that it was probably originally to be this song you would hear in that segment. Due to stupid YouTube copyright, I can only play a little of it, sorry. The Void. The unspeakable. If any of the little amount of entries in this category have ever crossed your mind even, you must be a hardcore Portal fan. Everything is sentient. The theory of everything being sentient is probably referring to all objects created by Aperture, even the ones not including an obvious AI like cubes, jump pads and the panels on the walls. We know that some objects are sentient, like the radio for example. It will scream in pain if you take it through an emancipation field, or shoot it with weapons if you spawn them in using cheats. GLaDOS also says that she killed the door mainframe, referring to it as him. She also once notes that a faith plate sent a distress signal, implying its sentience too. She also refers to the companion cube as sentient. She could of course be lying. We can't say that for sure. This theory is this far down not because it's unpopular or unknown, just for how scary the things it implies are. Imagine having your mind be trapped as a companion cube. With that out of the way, let's move on to AI cannot be sentient. The question if AI can be sentient is a complicated one. On one hand, you could say that you can program an algorithm to replicate human actions, but you can never program an AI to feel anything. It's just interpreting information and reacting to it. This would mean that GLaDOS, Weekly, and all the other cores are just algorithms that are programmed to react to their environment how a human would in any given situation. However, are humans also not just interpreting information and reacting to it? In reality, it comes down to what exactly being sentient means. A question philosophers have been asking for centuries and it will most likely still be asked for a few more, if not forever. We can agree that the brain in some way or another stores our sentience, as it is a thing processing and interpreting information. But that is just also what some might describe being too little to describe an AI to be sentient. If we attribute the brain in somewhere around 100 trillion connections to sentience, would an AI that has 100 trillion lines of code, data points, or both be sentient? Is it really about the number? Is a human still sentient if he was to lose a quarter of his brain? Most would probably say yes, depending on which part. What about half? What about 3/4? What about 90%? There's a real person that had 90% of the brain missing, who lived a relatively normal life, albeit with a low IQ. And the IQ scale is questionable at best as well. At some point there is a line in which you decide something is no longer sentient based on the activity happening in their brain. If an AI is to cross that, is it sentient? Probably depends on the information it's given. In reality, proving sentience is impossible as you can only prove your own. In reality, you are the only sentient one, Jason. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Still alive 10 hours, 5 hours 19 minutes. Whatever you do, Do not go to 5 hours and 90 minutes of the Still Alive 10 hours video. Still Alive 10 hours sequel. Or if there's anything that's holy in this world, there will not be a 10 hour Still Alive sequel. Portal based on CIA documents. There are no known documents that would indicate Portal being based on any real happenings. We are still far away from sustainable Portal technology as humans. The cake is the key to Portal 3. If you no-clip to the cake at the end of Portal 1, by running in circles around it 5,000 times, Portal 3 will be added to your Steam library ready to play. Nah, just kidding. This is just one of the basest things you'll see this deep down in an iceberg. GLaDOS is suicidal. This seems to be based on a Reddit post on the Game Theorist subreddit. You can pause and read it in full. The main points are: A. GLaDOS' design resembling a hanging woman as mentioned, which could be a metaphor for her being trapped. B. The lyrics of Still Alive, specifically her saying still alive, and it's sounding somewhat like she doesn't like the fact that she is, also implying she won't be someday. C. What GLaDOS had in Portal 2, where she mentioned she had quicksaved herself in a system that kept her consciousness trapped in an endless loop of the last 2 minutes before her destruction, which was you killing her. This would probably result in a state of despair that is unimaginable, a cosmic horror if anything, especially if it actually lasted for 50,000 years. In reality, all these points require some mental leaps to interpret them as GLaDOS being suicidal. The strongest evidence being the lyrics to Still Alive, and even those are a rather weak point. GLaDOS is testing you right now. No, she isn't.
GLaDOS will not be testing you
right now.
Why would you believe that? No.
Let's quickly move on
to the next
chamber. Next entry. Next entry. Portal 3 cancelled due to interdimensional circumstances. Portal 3 was never cancelled because it never truly began development to begin with, which we know from Eric Wolper mentioning that they have ideas that people seem to like, just that they can't get together a team to work on it. This was as recent as 2 years ago. This entry seems to imply that Portal 3 was cancelled due to interdimensional circumstances, which is just made up gibberish from all we know about the universe thus far. This entry in reality refers to an entry of a Mario 64 iceberg, which states that the sequel, Mario 64 2, was cancelled due to temporal leakage, which is also just made up gibberish, but has become somewhat of an inside joke. This was the entirety of the Portal Iceberg. Thank you to Factor75 again for sponsoring this video. Remember, use my link to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. Not only are you doing yourself a favor, you're also supporting me greatly. Also once more, a huge shout out to JD Creeper for helping me on the script, and to my Discord admin Reicter for creating the iceberg image. Speaking of the Discord, consider joining it. Also consider becoming a member. You get a few cool perks and it's only $3. Check the description for any corrections and more credits. Otherwise, thank you for watching.